You're tuning into the Unarmed Podcast with your host, Krystal. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Unarmed Podcast. Pregnancy is a beautiful, beautiful thing, isn't it? You know, I sure as hell thought so when I first got pregnant. When I first saw that positive pregnancy test, I was so overjoyed and so overcome with happiness. I couldn't be more excited to be pregnant. I went to Target the next day. I was looking at all the baby stuff. I was just so excited to be pregnant and knowing that Daniel and I were going to have our first kid together. I didn't know that there could be a dark side to pregnancy. I was never aware of that because all I had ever heard were women having these, magical experiences. It was butterflies, it was unicorns, it was rainbow poop. It was all this magical stuff. And so that is what I expected from my pregnancy. I had heard about morning sickness and all this other stuff, but I was like, I can deal with that, And so as my pregnancy went on, I was very, very excited. I fell really, really sick the first 3 months, which is pretty normal, right? I feel like it's either a hit or miss. You either get it or you don't. And with me, I got it pretty damn good. I don't know that I would call it morning sickness. It wasn't so much that I was nauseous all the time. It was more a feeling of like rocks in my stomach. I didn't want to eat. I was constantly going to the bathroom to throw up, to try to relieve myself because I just felt like I had rocks in my stomach. Like it was so heavy. It was just the worst feeling ever. I ended up losing like 10 to 15 pounds because I did not want to eat anything. I went to the hospital like 2 or 3 times because it was just so painful for me. But I ended up coming out, perfectly fine. They did blood work and everything. And they're like, even though you're not eating, you're not depleted of anything. You're doing just fine because you're drinking your liquids. So I would just get sent home and basically was told to suck it the fuck up. And so that's what I did. I went home and I suffered for the first 3 months. And then after that, I started getting a hang of things and I was able to eat again. And because I was in bed for nearly 3 months, I was in bed that whole time that my sciatic pain came with a vengeance. And so I started having to go to my chiropractor and getting that worked on because I was in bed for so long and my body was so used to movement by that point that, being in bed just made me even worse. And I was having the worst sciatic pain in the world. So after I got moving and stuff, I started getting better again, started getting excited again. And then I was hit with God knows what it was. And till this day, I have people coming at me and kind of giving me their thoughts on what they thought I had. But it doesn't matter now. It doesn't matter what I had. All it matters is that I got through it. And it was basically the worst anxiety and fear that had ever been instilled in me. And how this started was, I woke up one day. I was taking a nap and I woke up and I literally felt like I was about to die. My heart was racing. I was panicking. I felt like if my eyes were somewhat like blacking out. It was so unbelievably scary. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what caused this. I literally felt like I was dying. And I called Daniel in a frenzy. He was at work. He wasn't at home with me. And I said, something's wrong. Something just happened to me. I don't know what happened. I was still very shaken up by it. And, he was like, "You're fine. I'll be home when I'm home." And so when he got home, I just wrapped my arms around him because I was so terrified of what had just happened to me. And now looking back at it, I know that it was one of my first panic attacks. And I had never experienced anything like that before. I think I had had mild panic attacks before, where I was just, my heart was racing, but nothing like what I had felt that day. And it just started getting worse and worse and worse day by day. And as it kept going, I started getting the weirdest feeling in my head. It was as if I wanted to take my head and bang it against the wall. Like, I kid you not. It was so incredibly weird, and it was so scary. And it was scary enough to make me know that I needed help in some way or some form, because something was not going right in my head. It did not feel right either, whatever it was that was going on. And so I started getting on the computer and staying up late at night, just trying to figure out if anyone out there in the internet world or on Google had experienced anything like what I was experiencing at that time. And I was just searching for answers or what to do. And everything that came up led to anxiety. And I was like, shit, I know I have anxiety, but this is not what I used to have. This is bad. This surpasses anything that I had ever had before. And it scared the shit out of me. It was so unbelievably scary. And so I finally looked up a therapist, and I called her, I made an appointment, and I went in for my first ever therapy session. And it was an older lady, a very older lady, but she was incredibly sweet. And I remember her just telling me, "You're pregnant. And with pregnancy can come fears, this and that." And I said, no, this is not fear from being pregnant. This is something else. Something is very, very wrong with me, and I need help. And she was just very persistent on it being my pregnancy and me being scared of having a baby. And I knew in my heart that's not what was going on. Something else was very wrong in my head. And so I kept going to her. I kept paying her a lot of money per session for her to keep telling me that it's your pregnancy. And eventually she told me, "Tell your doctor to give you some medication." And I first went in there telling her, "I do not want to be on medication. I am here with you right now because I do not want to be on medication. I want to fix this." And something that, was very apparent to me was that I was very proactive about this. When I realized that something did not feel right in my head, I immediately took action. I didn't sit there and let it sink in. I didn't sit there and let it to continue scare me. I stood up and I looked for answers. I wanted to get fixed. I wanted to get help. And that's a big difference between, people that come up over anxiety versus the people that fall into that dark hole of anxiety. You have to be proactive about these things. You have to want to get better. And I wanted to get better. I was pregnant. I was going to have a baby soon. I did not want to be the way I was being at that time. I didn't want to have panic attacks every single day. I didn't want to be scared to wake up and have a panic attack every single day. I did not want to be like that. And so I sought help. And even though I felt like this help wasn't really helping me, I continued to go in the hopes that this was going to fix me. She even tried, when I say she, I mean the therapist even tried to delve into the accident. Can this be the accident coming back And I said, I don't know, but I'm willing to give it a try. What do we have to do to get into my head and figure out if it is the accident that's causing all this? And so we went back into the day of the accident. We went back into the times where Daniel and I were doing very bad in our relationship. And even though I was able to get a lot off my chest that I had never gotten off my chest before, it still didn't help. When I say I was having panic attacks every day, it is not an exaggeration. I was so scared to wake up in the morning because I knew that a panic attack was going to happen. And it wasn't a minor panic attack. These panic attacks had me on my knees. I would fall to my knees because I couldn't breathe, because my heart was racing, because I literally thought I was going to die every single time. It was the scariest shit I had ever experienced in my life. It was so scary. And once I realized that this whole therapy wasn't going to really do anything for me, because I thought it should have done something by now. I had already been there various times and nothing was working. And so I went on to the next thing, and I went on to books. And not so much reading books. It was books that you write in, you do little activities on, and it was specific for anxiety. And so I went on Amazon, I ordered myself one of those workbooks, and I started getting to it. It had questions, it had tips on what to do, and I read that book from beginning to end. I filled that book out from beginning to end. And while it helped while I was in the book and working on it, the minute I wasn't working on that book, it was back to the anxiety. And I said, there has to be something I can do. There has to be something I can work on to make this get better. And so the next thing that I went on to was an app called Headspace. And I had looked up meditation apps because when I was researching all of this, I heard that a lot of people came out of this dark hole through meditation. And at this point, I was willing to try anything and everything to get me out of this really dark hole that I was in. And when I say it was a dark hole, it was dark. It was so incredibly dark in there that I sat Daniel down one day when he got home from work. And I said, I don't want to scare you right now, but I want you to hide all of your guns to a place where I can never reach them. And that is scary. Like just repeating that right now and just thinking about it, it brings up emotions in me because that's scary. To be able to get into a place in your head or get to that dark hole and get so deep in there that you have to tell your significant other to hide their guns, that's insane. And it wasn't because I wanted to kill myself. It was because things were going so bad that I couldn't leave the thought out of me wanting an escape. I couldn't clear that out of my things because it was so bad. I didn't want to do it, but I understood that there could be a chance because of how bad things were. And I'm sure it scared him, and he did it. He hid his guns. He hid his guns to somewhere where I wouldn't ever be able to access them. And it was really scary for me, and again, it's like I said, I didn't want to hurt myself or anything like that, but it was just so bad that I couldn't cancel out the option of it, I guess. And so I went on to the next thing, which was meditation. And I found this app called Headspace, and I right away, like there was a free trial. I skipped the free trial and I went right into paying the yearly fee for it. I think it was like $80-$90 for the year subscription. I did the yearly subscription and I went right to it. I played episode 1 and it was the hardest thing ever because my mind was so wrapped up in anxiety that I couldn't even sit for 10 seconds without my mind going elsewhere. And it was a work in progress for me. I did that app every single day since the day I got it of my pregnancy up until the end of my pregnancy. I would sit down in my room. I would turn off the lights. I would sit down Indian style and I would just meditate and try to get myself to a place where my mind was quiet and to get myself to a place where my heart wasn't racing and to where I wasn't fearful of everything going on around me. And it was a big, big work in progress. I couldn't sit and drive in my truck because I immediately had to pull over for a panic attack. Everywhere I went, I had a panic attack. If there was too many people around, panic attack. If it was too hot, panic attack. It was bad. And I ended up finding out that this app, when I did this meditation, it worked for the time being. And I was okay with that. If I was able to clear my head for even 10 minutes a day, I was happy with that. And I saw that as progress. Because it seemed to be before, and I'm sorry about that noise in the background, it seemed to me before that I could never get silence in my head at all. And for me to get at least 10 minutes worth of silence was a good thing. So I kept doing it over and over and over and over again because I wanted to work myself up to a place where I could be able to make my mind go quiet when it was getting very noisy and getting back to that dark place. I needed to be able to shut it off on my own. And that's what that app helped me do. And again, it was called Headspace. And so I continued doing that for the rest of my pregnancy. I ended up stopped seeing the therapist at a certain point because it was just getting so expensive. And again, I felt like it was going nowhere because she kept blaming it on my pregnancy. And I knew that this was far, far more than the pregnancy. I was scared of going into labor. I will admit that. And I admitted that to her, that I was very scared of going into labor. But I don't think it brought on the anxiety that was coming to me. And so after that, I ended up hiring some doulas. And I did this because I wanted more help, as in people being around me. So you have to remember that none of our family, Daniel's or mine, none of our family is here in Florida. All of our family is in Texas. So I didn't have a way of picking up my phone and calling my mom and saying, "Mom, I'm having a bad day today and I need you." I didn't have that. I didn't have anybody. Daniel was working from 8 to about 6, Monday through Friday, and I was alone. It was just me and my thoughts. And that was bad. With everything that was going on, that was bad. I was just alone. And I had no one to talk to, no one to relate to. Everyone I was trying to relate to was on the internet. And it wasn't even me chatting with them or anything. It was me reading their stories and their articles that they had on the internet. And that was my way of relating to people that were going through what I was going through. And so I hired these doulas, and I paid a ton of money for these doulas just to have someone. And I wanted someone that came along with experience of the pregnancy and the labor and everything, hoping that, they would kind of calm my fears when it came to the labor aspect of things. And maybe that too would help calm me down in general. And so I hired these doulas, and I just got anxious every time. When they were actually there with me, they were incredible. But when they weren't there, and when Daniel wasn't there, it was so bad and it was so dark. And I remember one night the doulas were going to come over to the house, and we were going to write out my birth plan. And I was already feeling so anxious, and I was just laying down in bed waiting for them to get there. Daniel was in the living room, and I just wanted to be by myself in our bedroom. And I laid down on my side because I found that laying on my side, not only because I was pregnant and I couldn't lay on my back, but just laying on my side kind of comforted me at the time. And so I was laying on my side, and all of a sudden, this fear, this wave of fear just washed over me. And it was so overwhelming that I just started crying. And this wasn't the first time that it happened to me. It had happened to me a lot of times before throughout my pregnancy. And, I'm never one to question God. Not even for my accident. I didn't question why he did it. But I question him here because this to me was so bad. And I remember various nights sitting at the edge of the bed, crying my eyes out and just telling Daniel, why? Why is he letting this happen to me? And, Daniel didn't know what to say. And I didn't know anything else to think other than why? Why is he letting this happening to me? Why now? Why right now? And I feel bad for questioning it, but I was also in such a dark place at that time. And it was at such the wrong time. I always felt like I was harming Joaquin when I had these panic attacks, or because my mind was always in these really bad places. I felt so bad. I had no idea what he was doing in there or what I was doing to him. Was he going to come out this super fearful baby? Luckily, he didn't. But it was just happening at the wrong time for me. And so these doulas came one night, the night that they were supposed to write up the birth plan. And, that wave of fear came over me, and I just started crying and crying and crying and yelling at the top of my lungs, why? Why is this happening? And they walked in, and Daniel was like, she's in her room, she's having a hard time. And so they came in and they just hugged me, and they just wrapped their arms around me, and they're like, it's okay. It's okay to feel like this. You're not the only one who's ever felt like this before. It's okay. And at the time, I think the reason why it kept happening over and over and over and over again was because I kept telling myself that this is not okay. This is not okay. This anxiety is not okay. It's not okay to feel like this. And when they told that to me, when they told me it was okay to feel like this, it was okay to be afraid, it was okay to have anxiety, something just clicked in me. I remember watching a YouTube video before that moment. And when I tell you I researched the shit out of this, like, I'm not kidding. I researched the shit out of this. I watched so many YouTube videos. I read so many books, so many articles. And I came upon this one YouTube video that was like 15, 20 minutes long. And I'm not sure if he was a monk or not. He was something along those lines. And he was talking about how he used to struggle really badly with anxiety. And he said that he did not get out of that phase until he accepted anxiety. And he accepted that anxiety was one with him. And he said that none of it went away until he accepted that it was a part of him. And I found that so hard to comprehend at that time. I was like, why would you want anxiety to be one with you? Like, why would you even want it in your life or a part of you at all? And I didn't understand it, and I kind of just blew it off. I was like, this fucking idiot. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And so I blew it off. And when they told me that, when the doulas told me that, I immediately went back to that video because I had felt this sense of relief. And I went back to that video and I was like, I get it. I get it now. And I was immediately able to snap out of whatever the fuck was going on with me. I snapped out of it. I got my shit together. I went and I sat down at our kitchen table and we wrote out my birth plan. And, even though some things did make me anxious, I was able to quickly recover from whatever anxious feelings I was getting. And I was able to snap out of it. And I'm not going to say that it fixed me, the next day. No, none of that. But that day did help me go towards a more positive and a better place when it came to the anxiety. I just started, letting it be one with me. I said, if you have a panic attack today, I would tell myself this when I woke up in the mornings because I was so scared of waking up in the morning. I said, if you have a panic attack today, it's okay. Know that these panic attacks are not going to hurt you. You're not going to die from one of these panic attacks. You're going to be okay. If it happens, it happens. You're going to be fine within a few minutes. You are because you've been going through them every single day. So if it happens, and you move on with your day. And so I had to tell myself that every single day when I woke up, because if I didn't, then things wouldn't go right or things wouldn't be okay with me and accepting what was going on. And so I kept doing that. I kept working at that. I just wanted my mind to get to a better place before this baby came. And before I went into labor the day of my due date, the exact day of my due date. I flew in, not only my mom, but Daniel's mom as well flew in. And they wanted to be there for the birth of Joaquin. So we flew them in, I believe, at least 2 weeks in advance. They flew in to the due date. And so when they got there, things got even better. One, because I had my mom there. And, if you have a very close relationship with your mother, you know that moms can fix anything. Just them being able to hug you can fix a whole lot of fucking problems for you. And so her being there helped me. She gave me something to hold on to and something to love when nobody else was there because Daniel was always working. And I'm not angry at him or anything for working because he was working to provide for us and to provide for this baby that was coming. So I wasn't mad that he was working. As a matter of fact, I called him every single day when I was having a really, really bad day or a panic attack. And I kid you not, this man would come home on his lunch hour. Now, mind you, he worked like 15 minutes away from our house. So he would drive 15 minutes back, and his lunch hour was gone. I don't even know if he ever ate. He would come home from his lunch. He would always bring food that I wouldn't even eat the first 3 months, but he always came to my aid. And just having him there for that, 30 minutes worth or even less, did help. And I'm so grateful for him for doing that because he didn't have to, and he did it nearly every single day of my pregnancy. He was there at his lunch hour if I called that I needed someone to be there with me. And I love him for that. And so when my mom was there, when Daniel was at work, it really helped me. And as we went on in the pregnancy, the fear of the labor started kicking in more and more. And I think one of the things that I did wrong when it came to this was that I saw all the bad when it came to labor. Like I could never, for some fucking reason, I could never find the happy birth stories or the happy going into labor stories. I always found the bad ones. I always found the bad ones. And so I just had all these fears of epidural and the contractions. I just had a bad vibe for it from the beginning. So when we got closer, the fears started kicking in, but I started realizing that I could kick that fear with something good out of it. Yeah, that might happen, or yeah, this could happen, but you're going to have a baby at the end of it and it's all going to be over. And so I just had to keep doing things like that and continue to be proactive about what was going on with me. I don't think I would have been able to get out of that state of mind had I not been proactive about everything that was going on. So there was a day, I couldn't even tell you what day this was or how many days before I went into labor, but I woke up one morning and I had no fear, not one strand of fear, not one strand of anxiety. It's as if I had woken up and it was gone. completely gone. And it was so strange that I didn't even realize what was happening. I didn't even realize that there was this major switch in my mind that had just been flipped. I didn't even realize it. It was so incredibly weird. And when I think about it now, I know that God has tested me a lot in my life. He's tested me a lot. And I don't blame him. I think we were put here to be tested. And that was one of the hardest tests that he had ever put me through. And I don't know if he was like, all right, girl, like I tested you and I tested you pretty damn good. And you did all right. And I don't know if he just snapped his fucking fingers and voila, it was gone. But damn, I'm glad it went away. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't have anxiety anymore. I do. But my mind is in such a better place that I'm able to send that fear elsewhere or think of something else when I have those fears in me. The day that I went into labor, I surprised the hell out of myself. My labor and delivery was 1,000 times easier than the actual pregnancy and what I had been through. I had so much strength the day of my labor and delivery. I sat there, I had my phone with the app, with the timers, so I could be timing my contractions and how often they were coming. I was doing that. I had my doctor and I was texting him all the updates. And when it came time for him to say, now's the time, go to the hospital, I stood up. I woke Daniel up because everybody was asleep at this time. I woke Daniel up. I said, it's time. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go wake up the moms. So he went to go wake them up and he's like, it's time. He's like, what do you want me to do? And I said, load up the truck. I'm going to take a shower. I'm just going to recoup my thoughts, gather everything in my head. I'm going to take a warm shower. I'm going to take my time and then we'll leave. And for me to be able to say that, it was a whole different Krystal with me being able to say that. Rewind to a few weeks, I would have been a mess of a person if I had still had all that fear and anxiety taking over me. But I'm so glad that whatever switch was flipped when it was. And so I went on, I went through labor, I delivered a beautiful baby boy. But, anxiety and depression are real. There's nothing funny about anxiety and depression, and there should be no belittling of anxiety and depression. They are very much real. After I had that entire experience with it, I sat down and I told myself that I understood now why people can get to a place of committing suicide. I understood it. I felt for them. I empathized with them. And not that I didn't feel bad before, but I never understood it. I always said, how? How could they leave their families behind? Or how can they do that? What about their parents? Or if they had kids, what about their kids? I never understood it. But I understand now. And I hope that if any of you out there are struggling with anxiety or depression, just know that you're not the only one. There are probably a ton of people out there dealing with it too. And it's all about how you choose to react to it and whether or not you're proactive about it. These things can't be fixed. You cannot fix anxiety. You cannot fix depression with a snap of a finger. but you can work your way towards getting yourself into a better state of mind to help you deal and react with these things in a better way. And all of that has to come from you. This can't come from anybody else but you. You have to want to get better. You have to want to do better. Anxiety and depression can be lived with and they can be dealt with. I am living proof of that. Living proof of that. So if you're struggling out there today, know that you're not alone. Know that even someone like me, who you think is so strong, and sometimes people say almighty, I'm not. I struggle just the same as you. But I want to be better. I want to get better. I don't want to feel sick in my head. I don't want to feel sad. I want to live this life as best as I can. And I hope you guys do too. And if you're someone out there dealing with these things and you don't have anyone to talk to, you come talk to me. You go message me on Instagram. You go message me on Facebook. You go message me or email me. Message me any way you can. I'm here. If you need someone to talk to or someone to relate to, I'm here. You reach out to me and you talk to me before you ever think of hurting yourself. And know that there are lines out there that you can call. There are so many things you can do out there to help yourself. Don't let yourself get to that dark place. There is so much light in this world that can overcome all that dark and all that fear. So, with that said, I hope you guys really got something from this episode today. If you know someone who is dealing with anxiety or depression, please reference them to this podcast episode. Please let them hear this podcast episode. Share it. Share. This is a very real topic, and I know a lot of people struggle from this. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. After this episode, I will start bringing in a lot of motivating and inspiring people that I know will motivate and inspire the hell out of you. So please stay tuned for the upcoming episodes of all these incredible people that I will be bringing in. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you have a good week. God bless you.